Hi, welcome once again to Auditing 304, Session 6, Internal Auditing and Control. Management has a fundamental responsibility to develop and maintain effective internal controls. They are designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives. To achieve these objectives, internal control demands proper attention and a continuous basis. Internal auditors are mostly charged by management to be responsible for the well-functioning of internal control. This session, therefore, seeks to expose students to internal auditing and internal controls. By the end of the session, we're expecting students to be able to discuss the concept of internal audits and controls, outline the scope and benefits of internal auditing, enumerate and explain the components of internal controls, and design a system of internal controls. The session will follow the outline, these outlines. Read chapter 11 and 12 of the recommended text, Auditing and Assurance Services in Ghana, BEDI 209, and the session slides and any other auditing assurance textbooks that will be available to you. Internal audit. Remember, the focus from the beginning, from session 1 to 5, has always been on the financial statement audit and therefore the external auditor. But today we are looking at the internal auditor and internal controls. So that the internal audit is an appraisal monitoring activity established by management and board of directors. It seeks to review accounting and internal control system as a service to the entity. It examines, evaluates, and reports the adequacy and effectiveness of accounting and control systems to management and the board. Who then is an internal auditor? They are normally employees of the company. They could be certified public accountants, internal auditors, fraud examiners, and information system auditors. However, in recent times, there is an increasing trend towards outsourcing of internal audit function, either wholly or in part. So they can just be employees of the entity, or the function of internal audit can be outsourced. What are the rules of the internal auditor? So that they undertake risk-based auditing. Thus, they focus on risk of occurrence that could prevent the company from achieving its goals. They may be monetized risks, that is fraud, improper reporting, ineffective or inefficient use of resources, credibility loss, etc. They also focus on areas with high risks and high probability that controls are not in place or are weak. They find better ways and best practices of doing something in that particular industry or entity, partner with managers to find solutions and prevent problems. What are the scope and objective of an internal auditor? The scope and objective of internal audit varies from an organization to the other. That is, the key objectives may be to identify opportunities to improve the system, verify effectiveness of processes in a system, verify conformance to documented procedures, and verify conformance to applicable standards. Internal audit report. Remember, we are looking mainly as financial statement audit and therefore external audit. We will look at reporting later on, but here we are just basically looking at the internal auditor. So the internal auditors report to the audit committee of the board. I hope you have not forgotten who the audit committee is. Very important aspect of the board, committee of the board. We're saying that this ensures independence. It elevates issues to a level where they can be corrected, keeps the company board informed. That is, as internal auditors report not to management but to the board through the audit committee, independence is assured and therefore they keep the company board informed at every point in time and make sure things are done rightly and wrong parts are corrected before the end of the year. Now let's turn our attention to the differences between internal auditor and an external auditor. We are going to look at the differences or similarities from these strands: the scope of the audit work, the appointment, the reporting line, the qualification, and methods and techniques used in the audit. For scope and of audit work, we're saying that the internal auditor, determined by the audit committee and management to review efficiency and effectiveness of internal control system. But for the external auditor, it's determined by statute, by law, the Companies Code, Act 179. And also to report on the truth and fairness of a financial statement. The second difference is based on appointment. Internal auditors are appointed by management, while external auditors are appointed by shareholders. Third reporting line, internal auditors report to audit committee, while external auditors to shareholders. On qualification, internal auditors need not to be qualified professional accountants, but for external auditors, they need to be qualified professional accountants. Methods and techniques used in the audit. We're saying that for internal auditors, they employ tests of controls to assess risks. But the external auditor also employs tests of controls and other several methods, substantive tests, analytical procedures, and so on and so forth. So these 5 points help us differentiate and also know the similarities between internal auditor and the external auditor. Now let's turn our attention to assessing the role and scope of the internal auditor. The external auditor relies on some aspect of the internal auditor's work, very important, and therefore has even a standard on it. Where this is effective, the external auditor reduces the extent of audit tests to carry out. The external auditor will assess the internal auditors in the following areas: organizational status and reporting lines, the scope of internal audit work, technical competence, due professional care. That is for the external auditor to decide to rely on the work of the internal auditor. These are very important points that the internal auditor should achieve. Its status in the organization, the reporting line, the scope, the technical competence, and due competence of the internal auditor. Now, since you know who the internal auditors are, their work and the scope, and the differences between internal auditors and the external auditors, let's turn our attention to internal controls, which is the major work of internal auditors. Internal controls basically are controls is a process effected by an entity's board of directors, management, and other personnel, of which is designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives in one or more categories. So we look at it from operations, from reporting, and compliance. So you say management has a fundamental responsibility to develop and maintain effective internal controls, because we're saying that it provides reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives in one or more categories. Looking at the internal controls, COSO, that is the Committee of Sponsoring Organization of Tradeway Commission, has a framework for internal controls which every auditor pays attention to. This document identifies what the Commission believes to be the fundamental and essential objective of any business or government entity. The purpose of the framework one is to align a unified approach for evaluating internal control system that management has designed. It's also to serve as a common basis for management, directors, regulators, academics, and others to better understand enterprise risk management, its benefits and limitations, and to effectively communicate about enterprise risk management. The components of the internal control, that is according to COSO, we have 5. The COSO component or framework of internal controls have 5 main integrated components: the control environment, the entity's risk assessment process, the information system, the control activities, and monitoring of controls. I will entreat you to read more about the COSO framework and to better appreciate these 5 components, even though there's something about it in this slide, but I will still entreat you to read more about it. Audit of internal controls. How is the audit done? First, planning of the scope of work is very important. Obtaining an understanding of internal controls is very important. Evaluating the design and effectiveness of internal control. Testing the operating effectiveness of internal control. Assessing internal control deficiency and reporting on overall effectiveness. Integrating the audit of internal control with the audit of financial statements of the entity. quality control refers to the maintenance of standards of quality of goods, services. It's not just about having the controls. You need to also put in place quality controls so that the goods and services the entity is providing is of high quality. A system to provide reasonable assurance that the auditor complies with applicable professional standards and regulatory and legal requirements. Reports and other deliverables issued by the auditor is appropriate and in the circumstance. Because it's important, we have a whole standard on it, international standards on quality control. Now let's turn our attention to elements of a system of quality controls. What comes together to form a quality control? I will entreat you to read more about these points: the leadership responsibility of quality within the firm, ethical requirements, acceptance and continuance of client relationships and specific engagement, human resources, assignment of engagement teams, engagement performance, engagement quality control review, monitoring, and documentation. So, we've looked at the internal auditor, the differences between internal auditor and the external auditors, the functions of an internal auditor. We've looked at internal controls, what they are, the COSO framework, and we've looked at quality controls. Have a nice day, and if there are any questions, don't forget to contact me on Sakai. Bye-bye.